title has nothing to do with this movie. But my agent came in. I was working at Fox, at an office at 20th Century Fox. And she came in. I said, "How you doing?" She said, "Oh, fine." I said, "Where you been?" She said, "Oh, I've been with so-and-so and so." I said, "Oh, how's she?" "Oh, she's madly in love with some guy about so-and-so." And I said, "Madly in love? Madly in love? What's a neat title?" Anyway, so I looked it up. You'd think that Madly in Love in Hollywood would have been a title of a movie. Never has been. To this day, it has never been a title. There is a movie called Madly in Love that's made in, I don't know if it's Czechoslovakia or Poland or somewhere. There is a movie, Argentina maybe, I forget what it is. There is a movie called Madly in Love, but never in America. Isn't that strange? Anyway, so I thought, oh, I'll use that. Has nothing to do with the story. Unless you really think becomes madly in love with the idea of his freedom, you could imply that. But to go to a movie called Madly in Love, that's a date movie that some guy doesn't even want to go to. Nobody's going to see that movie, so maybe it's a bad idea to use that title. I kind of like that title because it's really a bad title. It became this thing about his phobic life and how it affected his relationship with Molly, who wanted him to go to Barstow because she was, I created her as a musician at a quartet, and they were going to go to Barstow to play at the Barstow College. And would you come? And he can't make it. He can't. But somewhere he gets shamed into making that trip to Barstow and then returning back home and making the trip and returning back home and finally getting on a freeway. As you read the script, you can see what happens to him, and he stops at the bar and he hears, I just had him stop at a bar for a drink. But what I didn't know was that he would overhear his robber's voice at the end. I didn't know that. So I said, oh, well, we'll move ahead with that. And then I had him chase him and all that sort of thing. Everything else didn't fall into place, but it begins like I thought I would establish him. I knew I wanted to establish him, so I put him at the beach. I don't know what's going to happen. At a certain point, after you do know what you've established, which is very little, you let it go. You really let it go. It's like you're giving a bird flight, and it goes. And if you could follow that bird, you could write what that bird is thinking and where it goes and what it does. So if you start to put somebody on a train track and you watch this story go, the story really does appear for you. In my class, I will use the word allow. You have to allow this tale to tell itself, and you have to allow people to arrive and disappear and create a problem for you. The robbery is real. Yeah, that actually happened. Then after that, I invented Molly. I invented that. I invented everything after that, including him going after. He's phobic. I mean, it begins with establishing his phobicness. He ends up facing the robber, going to his house, doing exactly what the robber did and said, which my robber did say, "Don't make any noise, motherfucker, I'll blow out your motherfucking brains and I'll give you a new asshole." That scares you. The old woman in the hospital. I love that scene. Came out of absolutely nowhere, as you could tell. And they knew it was because it was nowhere for them. He walked in and she said, "Oh, hello, come into my room." She's like 97 years old, frail, and she's in this hospital room. And he's walking down the hall because he just saw his friend die. And she says, "Edward?" He says, no, I'm not Edward. She says, "So good to see you." And that carried, and he said, well, no, I'm not. She says, but please come in my room. He says, okay. And then he goes, because the nurse says you have to go. And then he says, well, goodbye, Grandma. He's now a grandma. And she says, oh, yes. And she says, what's your name? And it changed, because she was playing her game, and he was playing his game. And when he said, Roger, she says, you're so sad. I mean, I didn't know any of that was going to happen. That is a favorite scene of mine ever. It's very touching. And it interrupts the movie in terms of mood. It becomes a really interesting mood piece. 3 rules. 1 is you must not write about yourself. 2 is you must not be cautious, because our mantra is caution is a thief. The second rule, the other rule is you have to, you may not ask questions when you write what I'm going to ask you to write. That is, you may not ask questions with a question mark. You can't say, where did you get those shoes? You can't say that as a question mark. But you can say, I like your shoes. They remind me of some leather place in Madison Avenue in New York City, where I saw that leather, and the other person that I'm going to write will say, oh yes, that's a shop where my wife gets her saddles there. And anyway, you keep talking like this, and you get information, but you never ask a question, because that just stops things. You don't want anything to stop. Okay, the other rule is you do not ever complete anything. Nothing is ever finished. I mean in the sense that somebody leaves a room. They say, I don't want to be with you anymore, and they start out of the room, and they close the door, but they don't close the door. Mm-hmm. The door almost closes, and you cut to something else. You never see anything concluded. That's a rule. If you have a problem with a character, give the problem to the character. I don't have to solve it. They have to solve it. They have to deal with everything that is facing them. And you allow that to happen. In a way, you're guiding it, but it happens when and any writer will tell you the best moment of their work is when they're surprised, right? And you don't know you have no idea what's coming. And these surprises take you places. They really do. They just lift you, and you move on, you move ahead. Dominic and Eugene. Did you ever see it? Oh, we'll see it. It's beautiful stuff in it. It doesn't totally succeed in the end, but it succeeds. But it's just a wonderful movie, I think, with Tom Hulce plays this role. But it's just a beautiful movie. It's about 2 brothers. One is sort of retarded, and the other is going to school to learn to be a doctor. He's going to med school, and he has to take care of and the other one, Dominic, Nicky, he's a garbage man. That's the best he can be. And it's this relationship, and it's just lovely. That's my favorite movie. There is no such thing as writer's block. Don't let anybody tell you they're in writer's block. They're just scared to get to work. We've all been in writer's block. You want to get to work, you get to work. I can't get to work. It's writer's block. There are therapists who teach you how to get rid of writer's block. I know about it. There's no such thing. You go to work. You make yourself go to work. There's nothing like a block. I don't believe in it. I just don't believe anybody has writer's block. They like to think they use it. They say, I have writer's block. I can't. That's too bad, pal. Get to work. I did a lot of television. Naked Cities and Route 66 and all those things. So I learned with exchanges between people. I wrote about people with their own problems and everything. And I had wonderful producers. I am the luckiest person in the world. I have never planned anything. I don't plan anything, like I don't plan what I write. Everything has come to me.